What's up, YouTubians? Gary, VWJawbreaker. Welcome to, I guess, part one, but really part two of the mini stroker series. So this is going to be a 1641, but instead of a 69mm stock crank, we have a small stroker crank, a 74mm stroker crank to be exact, which is going to make this a 1760cc engine. This is a spare parts build. This video, we're going to be diving in and doing nothing but all the case prep and case work. So in order to do that, we need to go ahead and mock up of the crank so we can go ahead and sit it in the case and figure out exactly where we need to clearance, what all we need to do. So let's dive into that here in a minute, but first we need to get the 60 out of the way, so I've got a little bit more work room in here since, you know, it's just a regular garage. Woohoo, exciting stuff. For those that have asked, right? So yes, Jawbreaker was originally on the road. Awesome car, love that car. I built this 2054 for that car, but then right after I built the engine and put it in Jawbreaker is when I got the 60. So the 2054 that originally was in Jawbreaker is in the 60, and yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. It was purpose built before I even really knew there was a purpose other than I wanted a bigger motor. Let's go ahead and get the 60 move out of the way. Let's do a cold start on her. Fire up, back her out. Let's get crack-a-lacking. All right, so to bring you up to speed, kind of start things off, again, this is a stock cast crank that has been reground to make it a 74 stroke. So basically what they did is they just moved the journals out this way some, so if you notice, super close to the edge there. This is not going to be a high RPM engine. This thing should be fine. Again, it's a used parts build, so we're just kind of using parts that we have, right? Now, if you notice here, I've marked this one yellow. That's because this particular rod journal is 10 under. The other rod journals are the same. They're all standard. Now you can pick up one of these little doodads here. They sell a couple different ones. These are for type 1 mains. It shows your standard, your 10, 20, 30 under. And you can pick these up from CIP1, I believe. CSP makes these. There's, I think, another one out there, and I think Dub Shop just started making one as well. You can basically just slap that thing on there, or whichever one. If you see a little gap there at the bottom, you know it's too big, or I'm sorry, too small. This is too small, that's too big. So you can just kind of rotate it around. You can do a quick check and find out exactly where you're at. Of course, this is no substitute for an actual caliper, whether you use regular or digital, that's up to you. One thing I do recommend is I found a engine build sheet online a long time ago, and I actually sit there and just kind of tweaked it and modified it to make it what I look for and the things I like to do. So first things first, we need to go ahead and slip on our rod bearings, get our rods on. Again, this is not a final, assembly. This is just a mock-up. Throw a little oil on the bearings, get things cinched down so we can drop it in, see what's going on. So thanks to AA Performance, we got our little care package in. Yes, I paid for this stuff, but they did help out some. So I definitely appreciate AA Performance. I've been shopping there for a long time, getting good stuff from them over the years. So we'll go ahead and bust out our rod bearings. Unfortunately, I had to get two different ones because we've got some standard and one 10 under, but it is what it is. We'll go ahead and get this together and we'll go from there. Before I forget, these stock rods here, what I do is I don't have a actual internal bore gauge to measure diameter. What I do have is telescopic bore gauges, so I can put that in there, run it around, make sure it's nice and square all the way around, and then take my measurements with the caliper from there. So that's now, one of the reasons I went with the mall bearings instead of the Silverline bearings, if you've noticed here, you've got a little tang that fits in that little tang groove. Can you see that? Yes, you can. So that tang goes in that tang groove. These fit absolutely perfect. There's that right there sits perfectly in that tang groove. On the silver lines, these actually sit cattywampus a little bit like that. You actually have to file the edges of the tang bearing, the tang itself on the bearing, to get that to sit flush in there. Spend a few extra dollars, get some quality bearings, you don't have that issue. All right, since we're right here, we'll go ahead and figure out our side play, but if you notice also, it's a little bump up. So you want the bumps to go up on the cylinder that they're supposed to be on. So we have that done. Again, this is just mock-up. We want to see what's going on. Not liking that rod at all. That one's good. That one's good. So your side to side should be no more than 16 thousandths. So we'll go ahead and grab a feeler gauge here. Grab 16. I can't get it in there. So our side to side on this one is 10 thou. This is the one I'm kind of worried about. That's really loose. That's going to cause a problem. I have to figure something else out here. Yeah, it's greater than 16. Can't even get the 16 in. Drop to 14. Yep, just get 14 in. So that one's at 14. 10. Oh, just get 10 in there as well. I'd say that's good. This rod here, let me go find another rod. Better. All right, so now that we've got this situated, we'll go ahead and move on over to the engine case. All I'm going to do is put probably just the number 2 bearing and put the rear bearing on there. That way we can set it in the case and we can start moving things around and see how it does. All right, so one thing that's going to make life easier for you is your dowel and oiling hole. Get your bearing lined up, get it seated in place, run a Sharpie mark on both sides, and then I like to put a line in the center pointing back towards the back of the engine. What that's going to do is help you actually get things lined up better. So there we go. Now we have our orientation for that bearing, and we'll go ahead and drop the next one in place. Same thing. And of course you've got your middle one here that has a split bearing. I guess it's not really a middle, is it? Then you've got your back thrust. The back thrust can actually be the worst one for me anyway to kind of line up. So there we go. I know it dropped in. Line on the sides. And again, little arrow. Dead center top. That way I know exactly the orientation of my bearing. All right, now with our bearings in place, we know exactly when we drop our crank orientation of the dowel pin so we can set it in and get everything locked in a little easier. But there's one thing I wasn't going to show yet, but we might as well since we're here talking about main bearings. So with our main bearings in place, believe it or not, this oil groove right here doesn't always line up perfectly with the oil hole in the case. So easiest way to solve that and check is I use a little bit of black paint. So let me set you up real quick and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so we take our marked bearing, take a little bit of flat black or whatever color paint you want to use, hit it on there, put your bearing back in place, make sure it's good and seated, pull it out, and right there I can see this one's actually lined up pretty decent. The hole just barely comes across. So on this one, I probably wouldn't touch it. Then you just take a little brake clean or something and wipe it right off. Good to go. We'll go ahead and check the others as well while we're here. And if you see right there, right there, you can see half a hole. Same with right there, about a quarter of a hole. And now this one here, you really don't have to worry about too much. It's got a tiny little oiling hole because you don't want a ton of full oil going to this front bearing due to the fact it's right here by the slinger and the pulley. So never drill that one out, and I guarantee you that one's fine, but we'll check it. Yep, you can see it right there. So we got our round hole, and there's our hole, so we're good. So all we did was take and just kind of bevel that side so the oil will flow gently into the hole. You don't want any hard, sharp edges. So it's just something I do. Now we just take our marks, line those up. You can usually kind of feel too when it starts to drop in. Here's an easy way to know if your crank's all the way in. Is take your other half bearing. See it rock? Crank's not all the way down. Yeah, we got some case clearancing to do for sure. All right, let me bring you around and kind of show you what's going on here. All right, it's gonna be kind of hard to point and shoot and all this stuff all at once. But if you look here, if you think about it, your rod's gonna be kind of halfway in between those two studs, right? That's gonna be kind of center of the bore. And if you look right down here, man, I can't even get a screwdriver tip. So what we need to do is we kind of mark, all right, and then go in there and clearance just a little bit. But then the other spot it's kind of hitting when I rotate it around is right down here. So we just need to kind of sand this down a little bit, and then we should have enough clearance. So I've actually had to grind quite a bit right here. As you can tell, man, it is really close. I'm not touching. Man, that's close. So I need to take some more off right there. Let me get a marker and mark it. Oops, sorry. So basically, all through right there is where it's got to come off some more. Now, this wouldn't honestly be so much of an issue if you were running aftermarket rods and not stock rods. Aftermarket rods bolt down through, and this is a lot more rounded down here and not so squared off. Up top, we're good. We've got about 80 thousandths of clearance up top, so I'll continue on that. Well, that was fun. I ended up taking a smidge more off right here than I really needed to, but everything spins just fine. We have nice rotation, no clearance issues. Got about 80 plus thousandths up here on the top, and as you saw, I kind of took a cartridge roll to everything, kind of smoothed it out real well. Same with over here. As you can see there, kind of just smoothed everything over real well. Same with up here. So nice and smooth now. No sharp edges anywhere. Now, if this was a counterweight crank, you know, you got your counterweights to stick down more, and depending on more of the stroke you go, you may actually have to go down into the webs down here and clearance some more. So, but for the most part, looking good. Now, time to do that side. I'm not going to bore you. I'm going to get to work. All right, well, we got the other side all taken care of. So now, I have an idea. I say let's mock it up and run it through and see if anything hits. How are you gonna do that? Watch this. Now with the rubber bands in place, holding the rods pretty much center where they need to be for the stroke, yep, we're hitting somewhere. So if you watch these rods, they're not bouncing or anything, but if we come around to this side, if you watch these rods here, I'm going to go and turn it. See that one jump? That one jumped. That one jumped. So we're hitting somewhere. Okay, we're hitting at the spigots here in the center. So this is why we test things. Right, coming up. Yep. There we go. I started to go backwards and that's where it hit. So right there on the spigot, I forgot to do the spigots on this side just ever so slightly to relieve that rod bolt. So we'll do that and we'll put it all back together and try again. So I'm going with 3rd time's the charm. Nope, close. This one here is barely hitting. Tons of room on that one. Let's flip her. Tons of room. Tons of room. Little bit right there. 4th time is the charm. Tons of room. And see right there, 4 takes. You just gotta kind of hit things little by little, right? That's why it's mock-up. You know, the reason I use the rubber bands is to simulate the jugs being on there and the pistons being on there, right? Help hold it center so we know that everything's gonna flow properly. And that's why when I did it, I rotated it, I also kind of turned it around a little bit as well to make sure I had additional clearance. So just trial and error, little bit by little bit. But this is why this is all mock-up. That's why I don't have all the bearings on there, the gears and all that stuff on the crank, because I'm gonna take everything apart and clean it before we do final assembly.
Well, it's a couple days later. It got way too hot. So now that we have the case all squared away and everything clearanced and moving nice, let's go ahead and prep this case for tapping it for full flow and doing a couple other engine mods that I like to do to the case. So I'll go ahead and get this disassembled and we'll dive into that.
Now for tapping the case, we're going to go through this plug right here. We need to remove that aluminum plug out of the case. Take yourself a drill bit carefully and a punch that the drill bit will fit into. Carefully. You want to go slow, not too fast. Then take your punch, slowly start working it sideways. You don't want to work hard, just wiggle it back and forth. You already just saw it move. Boom, there we go. We got the plug out of there. So now we need to drill and tap. Now just remember, these are very soft cases. We've got our drill and our tap. This is a 3/8 NTP, and this is a 3764 size drill bit, which comes in the kit. Turn it on slow and just go easy. Now for the tap, just make sure you get it started nice and straight. And this is gonna cut really easy. And being NTP, this is tapered. You're gonna wanna run roughly half the tap in, but I'll show you an easy way to figure out if you've got enough in there or not. So as you see, we take a little bit of that off. You don't want to run this too deep either, because you will split this boss right here. I mean, we're only a few turns in, and it stops right about there, because remember, that tap is tapered. So you can run it in, and let's say you don't stop right here. Say you stop right, you know, pointing down. Put your tap back in, do about another full turn, and then it'll get you about where you need to be. So that's good. Now I want to show you what I do with this. I've never been a fan of how that is in there. You notice right there too, there's that step inside. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to drill this fitting out. So again, this is a 3/8 NTP fitting. This is a 7/16 drill bit. So it's going to fit right down in there. Nice and smooth. Just the diameter so we can take that lip out. So you just want to go nice and slow. And if you notice there, it actually cleaned up the inside and got most of that step inside removed. So now we got a little bit better of a free flow. Actually, I'm going to take that down a little bit further down. Actually, no, I think that's pretty good. Took it down right about there. And go a tick further. Go just a tick further. There we go, that cleaned that up quite a bit. So now the oil flow comes up a lot nicer and has a lot gradual transition. And we got rid of that slight little step inside, which would cause ever so slight resistance. You want this to free flow as much as possible. It's just something I like to do. All right, now that we have our inlet hole, here is the output side of the oil pump that would feed this way, right, and go over and in. Problem is, now that we're feeding oil in here and we're not using the output of the pump to go in here, pressure can backfeed and slightly go in between the case and the pump. Essentially, you lose oil pressure there. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill and tap this for a plug. So this is a 1/4 inch NTP plug. Make sure you get it started straight. End up having to go a little bit deeper, and then of course you guys kind of cut out a little bit. There we go, start to get snug. There we go. And it's just below the surface right there. I can actually take a little file, run across, and I can see that, yep, we're just below the surface. That's perfect. All right, now this side of the case is fully done. So we've got drilled and tapped here. We've got our drill and tap here. That way we can full flow and not have pushback. Got everything clearanced. Everything's looking good. This side of the case, same thing. I need to go through and actually clean up with the cartridge roll. We'll do that off camera. But the last thing that I like to do is something that a lot of people don't talk about. And that is, if you notice, it's the same thing on this side of the case back here. There's nothing for drain back on a lot of these cases for your rear main seal. So let me show you how we're going to solve that. I like to do it on this particular side because this is the side that I normally put the sealant on before putting both of them back together. So your rear main seal actually sits right down here in this groove. All right, let's try that again. So again, there's nothing here on a lot of the stock cases, and your drain back hole for your oiling is all the way here. So what usually happens is your case sits flat and your area back here behind your rear seal will fill up that full with oil before it drains back into the case. So if you actually look on a few other sites, there's some high-end engine builders that do this mod, and it's very simple. All you need is a fine file, and I'll show you exactly what we're going to do. All right, so back here in the back, Again, your seal sits down here. You want to keep some oil in there, but what I found that works best is if you take and run a groove right here down at a slight angle to help relieve that oil. Now, you don't have to go deep. You just need, I don't know, about a half a mil or so. Up top here, you need to run a groove also. Why would you need a groove up top? Well, you need air in to let oil out. See, even my case, that is the aftermarket Adelina case that has the stroker blah 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 super case, actually has a drain back hole down through here. Problem is, it didn't have any vent up here. And you would think, oh, that's a vent right there, but problem is you need to get a little bit more air in there to let things properly drain out. Ever since I did that, I've never had a problem with a rear main oil leak since I've started doing these mods to the cases. So let me show you real quick how we do that. There you go. And that is only roughly that deep. There's really not, you don't need a whole lot. And we'll do the same up top here. And again, like as you saw me, I kind of rounded this a little bit, kind of rounded that a little bit, because you never want sharp edges on everything. So we'll do the same up top. And again, believe it or not, this little thing right here is going to help prevent rear main seal leaks on these Volkswagens tremendously. Because again, with the way that sits, your stock oil drain back holes all the way up here, now we have a little somewhere for it to seep. So after you shut your engine off, this is full of oil, comes down and sits that full all the time, and that's why a lot of times people have their seal seep on the back. So, you know, this isn't going to allow all the oil to go back when you're running. That's what that drain back hole's for. Leave that alone. This is for after you shut the motor down. It can slowly seep through and not seep out the other way. Now, I can't take credit for this. You know, I didn't come up with this modification. There's actually, we all know him if you're in the Volkswagen community, Viper 76 Romeo or whatever his name is. He's the one that sent me the video that actually Jake Raby, who builds a crap ton of high performance Type 4 engines. Yeah, go check out that video. I think it's on Facebook. Jake Raby's mostly on Facebook. He has a video of this as well, explaining everything in detail. Again, I've done now 4 or 5 of them. Not one has seeped at all. To me, it's worth a little 5 minutes to do. All right, well, I think that's gonna about do it for now. You know, we got the case mocked up, crank mocked up, we got everything clearance, we got tapped, we got modifications going on. Everything is about good to go on the case. So, off camera, I'm gonna go ahead and sit there and finish cartridge rolling everything, making sure everything's nice and smooth, because you don't want sharp edges. That's just, it's not good. And then from there, I'm gonna flush everything out real well, flush the oil galleys out real well, make sure everything's spick and span clean. Then I'm gonna go ahead and put a coat of paint on it. Yeah, I'm gonna paint my engine case. You believe what you wanna believe. I don't have issues painting cases. One thin coat of some flat black is really all you need. And then from there, well, next video, we'll bring you back and we'll go ahead and start doing final assembly on the crank, get that fully done. Then we'll go ahead and start loading up the bottom end, and I'll show you a cam and bearings and all that stuff, and show you how a lot of that prep goes into final assembly. So stay tuned. Another video coming out in a few weeks, and we'll catch you then. Until then, be kind to one another and be good.